I'm realizing something today about responsibility and how we try to take responsibility, too much responsibility, and we try to take responsibility for shit that we have no business being responsible for because we're control freaks. I feel like when people are obsessed with responsibility, it's because, I say we, because I'm extremely controlling. I even have to act like I'm like laid back or whatever because I'm extremely controlling. And so I go through, I can't even say phases, all the time. I'm taking responsibility for shit that I probably don't even need to take any responsibility for, like very human things about me. Because it's about control. I want to believe that if I am responsible for an outcome or I'm responsible for something, it means that I have control and I can't just be like victimized, or I can't just be powerless. The thought of being truly powerless, I can't handle it, even though it's literally in every bit of existence. So I take responsibility for shit that I don't need to take responsibility for. And I think about people, I think about how depression rates are so high. I think that people who try to be overly responsible are the ones who get stress-related illnesses, are ones who are stressed out all the time, are ones who have very addictive personalities, who have all kinds of like mental illnesses like anxiety and depression, whatever else, because we are trying to take responsibility for things and just shit that was around before we were born. It will continue happening after we were born. Things that are just innate to humans that we don't have any control over. And then we put ourselves in positions where we're so fucking stressed out because we're trying to take so much responsibility for things. We become addicts and we become obsessive compulsive so we can relieve the stress that we've taken on. And then we end up putting ourselves in positions where we become even more powerless and more out of control than ever. Like, I think of how if you try to take any responsibility for politics, I feel like this is why, with this election that we just had, I was watching my clients and people I know, and I just felt the energy in the air all around me that people were so stressed out. People were going fucking crazy. People couldn't even drive on the roads in November. People were swerving out in front of me, and just because as a collective, we are trying to take on responsibility for politics and how this country turns out and all this shit, as if we aren't ran by a fucking monarchy or an oligarchy or whatever it is called, where there's like a group of elite, powerful people who have all the control. I don't think we live in a democracy. And this monologue isn't going to be all about politics, but it has a lot to do with it. If you want to keep a country from uprising and overthrowing the upper class and the people who are actually controlling the country, you have to give them the illusion of democracy. You have to give them the illusion that they have had a hand in really building this country and the power structures of this country, that they have a say in how things turn out, that they're not just slaves living under an oppressor. You have to give people the illusion that they are part of things, even though we're not. You can see how our votes don't matter. The popular vote doesn't fucking matter. I don't mean to be cursing at whoever's listening to this. I'm not cursing at you. I'm literally staring at the road that I'm driving on and talking about whatever's coming into my head. The popular vote doesn't even matter. What matters is the Electoral College, what these old white men who are in the upper 0.00001% decide. They have to give you the illusion that we live in a democracy and that your vote matters and that you're responsible for things because, one, they want you taking on responsibility that you have no business taking on so that they can relieve themselves of the stress and the guilt and the shame of how corrupt things are. They want you to think it's your fault so they can just offload it all onto you and that they don't have to deal with it because it's an energetic burden. And they want you to think that it's your fault when it really has nothing to do with you because your vote doesn't matter in the first place. And they need you to think that you have some kind of responsibility or it's your fault how things turned out or you could have done better or whatever because they don't want you to uprise. They don't want you guys to realize that you have no control. We live in an oppressive slavery society that's run by the upper class, who none of us are a part of. And if people really accepted the truth of how fake this democracy is and how it's all a fucking lie, then everyone would uprise and everyone would overthrow everything and we would totally ignore the government and we would live in small local communities and have our own governments within our communities and not listen to a fucking thing on the TV or on the media about the news or whatever. So this kind of goes into how people who are really into politics and they think they have a civil duty and they have a voice and their vote counts and they take some kind of responsibility. You know how fucking crazy people get around election time? It's because you're trying to take on responsibility for an entire political system within one body, within your little body. You're trying to think that you deserve to take on any responsibility for this giant fucking $1 trillion debt, trillion fucking pound political system we have. No wonder people couldn't fucking drive in November. It's just an example of what I mean when we try to take responsibility for things we have no business taking responsibility for. One, we are being manipulated into doing it because some political structure or some power, someone who wants power but they don't want the responsibility that comes with that power, they want you thinking that it's your responsibility. We in reality, we have very little control, which is hard for me to accept. I have very little control. I'm responsible for maybe a fraction of the things that I try to take responsibility for. I don't have the power that I want to have. I'm very impulsive. I'm very driven by biological stuff. I'm very out of control in many ways. And it's not even my fault. I can't even demonize myself for it. It's just nature. And so when I try to take responsibility for things and I end up giving myself stress-related illnesses or I can't sleep at night and I can't solve these issues, it's because the issue isn't originating from me, so I can't solve it. But it's benefiting some social structure or some people in power somewhere if I think that things are my responsibility and I internalize responsibility for things that didn't even originate from me. That's why I start feeling out of control and I become obsessive compulsive and I develop addictions and I can't solve whatever this thing is I'm trying to take responsibility for because I can't. It's not me. It's like I'm trying to solve a puzzle that isn't even for me. I can't do it. And then we shame people for giving up on things when it was never something they could win at. It had nothing to do with them in the first place. And politics is just an example of this. See, this is why when my clients were telling me about the election, I said, I don't fucking care. I don't give a fuck. And I'd start laughing about it. Like my one client, he got so fucking mad. He was so upset about what they're doing to this country and these lawmakers and all this shit. And he has the news going in the other room. And I just started laughing like, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a single fuck. I don't give a damn. I'm not going to listen anyway because I had no voice in the first place. They just want me to think that my vote matters and all this shit. And if you didn't vote, then you can't complain about how things turned out in this country. They don't fucking care. They don't listen to you anyway. You can complain all you want. You can whine and be as miserable and terrible all you want. You can throw as big of a fit as you want because you're being exploited. You're being victimized. I feel like people go crazy during election season whenever it happens because I feel like deep down we all know that, oh, here we go again. We're out to be victimized in a whole new way. Oh, here's a reminder of our true powerlessness and our slavery, but we can't handle that. And I feel like the people who can't handle that the most are the ones who then try to go into denial by being the most adamant about voting and being the most into politics and trying to study everything and study every candidate and try to make the best choice possible. There was an election when I was in college for some like local shit. I just knew this was a joke. I was laughing to myself. And I went into the election place that was being held at the church down the street, and I just filled in a bunch of random bubbles for all kinds of random people. I didn't even fucking know their names. And I left and I was laughing to myself because that's literally what it is. That's how much my vote really matters. And it doesn't fucking matter. It's a fucking joke because they want the illusion that you're part of this because they want you to take responsibility for the shit that they're doing. Because then if you think that you were involved in this mess that was happening way before you were born, if you think that you had a part in the destruction of this country, then you also, by default, think that you have a part in whether you can turn things around and whether you can be good and whether you can be a good citizen. Fuck. Highways down here are so weird. I'm starting to dread whenever I have a shift in the city because the highways in St. Louis are really weird now. And there's like one lane highways in some parts of it. And then there's potholes everywhere. And then there's random cobblestone streets which are fucking up my tires. But guess what? They probably want me to think that I'm responsible for it. And if I would have voted for, should we have cobblestone streets in the city of St. Louis? If I would have voted yes on Proposition H or J, then I could have had a say in whether their streets are fucking up my car. And it's my fault. So I need to take responsibility for how they built the fucking highway, and they don't know how the fuck to build a highway. But they don't give a damn because in the city, that's where all the black people live, and black people are who they pinned all the responsibility for how all of America turned out because it's so fucking racist here. Yep. They don't give a damn about black people here. Like, I had a shift with an old black lady yesterday, and her sister's there, and she's talking about how all of the people, when they come in for a shift, they rob her and they steal from her. And I said, I don't want to do that because I'm going to need health care when I'm older. And I don't want to set myself up to experience that because then I'm going to blame myself because I'm going to think that it's karma or something. And they acted like it was so, oh my God, like an angel was sent to us. Because they're so used to having to take responsibility for how fucked up society treats them, because society trickles down all the responsibility for anything bad that has ever happened in society onto black people. And then they want black people to take responsibility for everything. But yeah. Next, they're going to try to start telling us we need to take responsibility for the weather and that it's our fault. And that we need to be Zeus and we need to control the weather. And if it starts raining outside, then it's your fault. And fuck you. What else do we take responsibility for that we have no business taking responsibility for? But we do it for the sake of control because we don't want to accept how terrifying it is that we are powerless and we're victimized every day in all kinds of ways. And that we're human and humanity has existed for a very long time and it will exist for a very long time after us. It's like my choice to not want to have kids. Hold on. 1.2 miles. Take 55 north. It's like my choice to not want to have kids. I don't want to have kids purely as a control tactic because I don't want to accept that, one, it's in my biology to want to have kids. How at my age, at 27, my relationships are almost guaranteed to take on a life of their own because of biological impulses to have kids, which is why I don't want to date. And I'm trying to just like lock myself away in my... Where is 55? Oh. I'm trying to like lock myself away in my own isolated little world and just do whatever I can to avoid it because it's a control tactic. Because I want to take full responsibility for my biology, which is borderline impossible, actually, without driving yourself insane. And I want to assume that whatever happens to my child is totally my fault. And I would be like a hovering parent, and I would feel so ashamed if I had a child when I didn't absolutely have to. And then I know it takes a village to raise a child, and I would try to take responsibility for society when I, in reality, have little to no control. And once this child is in this world, before it's even born, it's already being exploited just due to life. But it's so hard for me to accept that. So I want to say I don't want to have kids. I want to get my tubes tied. I'll abort the kid. I will do anything possible to not have a kid. Because, like I said, I'm extremely controlling. And I want to take responsibility for stuff I have no business taking responsibility for. Also, I do this because I want to have the right to punish my parents and say, well, you could have just aborted me and you chose this, so you're responsible for everything bad that's ever happened to me, and you're terrible parents, and I hate all of you, and I'm superior to my family, because if I have a kid and I end up becoming a parent just like mine, I'm going to have to forgive them. I'm going to have to let them off the hook because I'm going to be in the same boat as them. And I don't want to do that. So yeah, it is about power in a lot of ways. I hate driving in the fucking rain on the highway. Ugh. And when it starts snowing and there's ice on the highway, I'm just gonna have to call in. Yeah, that's just been what's on my mind today. We try to take responsibility for shit we have no business taking responsibility for. And then we drive ourselves so insane by how much responsibility we're trying to internalize and how much stress it's causing us to not be able to resolve it because it's not even from us, that we end up developing stress-related illnesses and addictions and mental illnesses, and then we become more of a liability than ever. We become more helpless and powerless than ever. So it's like we just screw ourselves by thinking we were responsible for shit in the first place, and we end up in a more powerless, out of control situation than ever because we tried to be in control. Yeah, like I'm not responsible for any of my clients. I think this is an example of something that happened. My former clients who were married, they're like 85. One of them has dementia and he can't do shit. He had a stroke. When I first met him, I'm not saying their names. So as far as you guys are concerned, I'm talking about people I just made up in my head. And I'm lying about everything. The first time I met this old man, he was laying in the floor in a diaper covered in his own piss because he fell out of bed and he didn't even know left from right or where he was or who I was. And then I feel like they felt ashamed of themselves because of the way they aged and they didn't really take care of themselves that much. And then gradually, within 2 or 3 shifts, the old lady who is his wife, who always leaves to go watch football games at someone else's house and just to get away from him, she tries to dump all that responsibility for however he's doing onto me. So he fell, as he always does, because he can't walk and he doesn't know how to walk anymore. He fell. And then she came rushing in the other room when she got home and she tried to blame me for it and say like, you have to guide him. You have to guide every fucking step he takes. You have to talk louder to him. You have to help him visualize how to walk. You have to do this. You have to do that. You didn't do this. Bitch, shut up. And she tried to start making me take responsibility for her husband's condition, who she let get worse and worse before she even got him healthcare help. And so it's just an example of someone trying to offload responsibility onto somebody else and try to make me think that I'm responsible for whatever happens to him. I'm not fucking responsible for that. If he falls 3 times a day and he falls out of the bed at night, I'm not responsible for if I'm doing everything I can to help him and he still falls. You need to take him to physical therapy. But you want to go watch a fucking basketball game at some old lady's house and dump him on me. It's like a babysitter. Kids trying to blame the babysitter for how fucked up they're raising their kids. You want to blame the babysitter? You go raise your damn kids. And then the last time I worked for this man, his wife, I know after I left the other time, she was complaining up and down about me and acting like I'm a terrible employee and all this shit. And he started, the next time I saw him, as soon as he opened his eyes, he started saying like, I'm a stupid bitch and I don't know what I'm doing and I don't deserve my job and I'm going to get fired. And, what else did he say? He said he thought he was in the jungle in Africa and he was on a safari or something. He said he put his feet on the floor and he's like, so where's the watering hole I'm supposed to put my feet in? I said, what? And he said, the watering hole. And I said, you mean this little blue carpet? And anyway, he was losing his mind. And then he got in his wheelchair and he said, I lost my damn mind and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I had to make him a meal and he said that it tasted like shit. And then like he just tried to offload all responsibility for his condition and his life onto me. And I can't absorb that, so I dropped his case. Like, they wanted me thinking I'm responsible for everything because they wanted to offload all of that energetic burden onto me. 80-year-olds wanting a 26-year-old to think everything that's ever happened in their entire life and their decline in old age and how they didn't take care of themselves and how their kids don't want to come take care of them because they ain't shit. They want me to think it's all my fault because they don't want to accept their life. And it's just another example. So I dropped his damn case. But I even noticed afterwards, I still kind of internalized it. I internalized it, and I started calling other people a stupid bitch, and I started thinking like, I was carrying that for a while until I became aware of it just recently. But I'm not exempt. I do something similar to other people. Like, I'll try to make other people take responsibility for how my father failed me. And I'll try to treat them like they're supposed to be my father. Or I'll try to treat other women, like, especially older women, like they need to be my mother. And I try to do it too. And I think if we were fully aware that we have a tendency to do stuff like this, we probably wouldn't do it. And the reason why people do offload responsibility onto other people, and they want people who take responsibility for everything to be in their lives, is because we're not aware of ourselves. And we'd also have to come to terms with, we want people who are very responsible in our lives. And we want to continue playing this subconscious game that we play. Because if we were aware of how much we want people to take responsibility for us, we also have to come to terms with how much responsibility we have always taken for other people. And how this has gone back to decades ago. We've been doing this for so long, and it's too painful and it's too upsetting. So I think a lot of times we want to opt for just continuing this cycle. Like, it's also similar to college. We take responsibility for how much student debt we're in. We take responsibility for how we had to go to college because we're set up in a society where they want you paying $30,000 plus to get a degree and then barely making shit more than you would have without a degree. And they want us to take responsibility for student debt that they set us up to have, where they basically gave us no other choice. They want us taking all that responsibility. So you see how stressed out people get about student loan debt? How that stress is like monumental compared to other forms of stress? It's because we are trying to internalize the stress and the debt of an entire country's political system, of an entire system. And you're one person trying to internalize the stress of a huge fucking multi-million, billion-dollar industry. Like, you can't. So you go crazy. Ugh. But I have to remind myself, with the kinds of people that I work with, I'm not responsible for them and their conditions. My responsibility and my abilities are actually very limited. And I can't internalize their health conditions. And I can't think that I'm there to be a superhero. Yeah. So I have to drop clients all the time. Or I have to like take a break and disappoint people all the time. Yep.